you're so free. Your feathers are fire like the sky, and your spirit is one with me. Your wings span mighty oceans, your eyes see everything. The slightest of your motions can make the continents ring. Yet in all your might and glory, vanished from the skies, leaving just another story, missed millions of man-made lives. They tell of how you fell from the sky.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Jay Weidner, called by Wired magazine an authority on the Hermetic and alchemical traditions, and a conspiracy hunter. Jay, you know, that's almost as bad as being called anti-Semitic these days. You know, conspiracy theorist.
Same thing, isn't it?
Now, you know, I want to bring up something because I wrote a book 40 years ago, and a short story 40 years ago that seems to keep coming true. Everything, a lot of the things that I envisioned keep happening in real life. And I talked about civilizations much older than what we're considered about it, that our history gives us. I got a feeling you kind of agree with that.
Oh yeah, I can hardly believe that anyone thinks that we've only been around here for a few thousand years, not with the preponderance of evidence that have been found in the strata and the layers going down. I think the human race has been here on Earth for a long time. A fully developed human race has been here on Earth for at least 1 million years.
Well, one of those oddities are finding human footprints beside dinosaur tracks, but
oh yeah, you find that. You find objects down. Miners have found objects down at levels of dirt which should be, 800,000 years ago, and yet there they are. Campfires have been found, logs that have been cut and serrated and burned in circular places with rocks in a circle, and these have been found, carbon dated 900,000 years ago. But they just ignore all the evidence, and because they don't want to believe it. They want to believe that everything would happen through evolution, very gradually. There was no real catastrophes. Human race has just been here a little while, and all those stories that the people have of legends going back for hundreds of thousands of years, well, that's just folk stories, and none of it's really true. Well, I don't believe that. I believe that they actually are true. And that's the way I read history. I read history as if the people that are writing the books are actually telling me the truth. They're not lying, they're not making up fables. They're actually telling me exactly what's going on.
Well, there's accounts in the Bible, in ancient history, about what we call UFOs, flying saucers, or I call them Earth ships in my fiction books.
And I call them unrecognized fascist observatories. And so, I don't really believe that the UFOs are from other planets, although there may very well be extraterrestrials and other planets and everything. I just don't see why a UFO would fly all the way across from Andromeda to land here and tell us that we shouldn't pollute.
Well, I feel like I've got a little different view of things. All the ancient history, all the ancient pyramids, which they keep finding lots of more of, they're all located in prime dope growing regions. I think we were colonized by interstellar drug dealers. What do you think?
Certainly gives a whole new meaning to being spaced out.
Well, you know, here we're the garden planet. We're the Garden of Eden here. They, you know, God gave us, you know, cannabis, you know,
Well,
plant of renown.
everything. So everything is here for us to use, and to outlaw a plant that God gave us is just about as sacrilegious of a thing you could do, as you might as well just deny the existence of God if you're going to outlaw God's creations. And so, yeah.
It's kind of a police state, isn't it? Isn't it a police state when somebody can walk up to you and say, "What do you got in your pocket, boy?"
Or what are you growing? Right? And now they've expanded their abilities to destroy our lives by passing that Food Safety Act last year, where they can actually come in and say, the FDA can come in and say that your garden is illegal because it was not planted under the auspices of what they think is right.
That's right. And now in this article, the article that I was drawn to, and you know, I'm not exactly, you know, I think religions were created for controlling humanity, controlling the masses. You know, and that don't mean I don't believe in God. You know, I believe if you're omnipotent and omniscient and you're the only one of your kind, you got to be bored shitless. So what do you do? What do? You can do, well, you create us, you put a little bit of your divinity in us, your energy in us, you're the power that holds the atoms together, and suddenly we got a direct connection, and we don't really need the preachers or the churches, but then that's just my opinion.
Well, that opinion has been shared by many people through history, and in fact, the people who espouse that point of view have one thing in common. They all end up dead. And
they've only tried to kill me 3 times in the last 7 years.
Oh yeah, they like people to say that you do not need a middleman between you and the creative force. They want that middleman because that way, in case you get any funny ideas about things, they got to have that middleman in there to make sure that you're kept under wraps with what you're thinking. And so religions were created by the powers that be, who actually are quite mysterious. They're not who we think they are.
Yeah, that's the other. You know, I said I believe that the church in 350, I believe AD, promoted Jesus to God because they didn't want men like you and I aspiring to be the kind of man he was and the kind of man he said we could be. He said, "You can do everything I do and more."
Oh yeah, definitely. I believe that. I believe that Jesus was the leader of a rebellion, actually, against the forces of control, the controllers, and he paid the very, very severe price for that rebellion. And a lot of people who, if you examine the words of Jesus, you can see that he's telling them that the God that the people of his time were worshiping is not really the true God. And this was the heresy. And it wasn't the heresy that he said he was God. He actually never said he was God.
That's right.
But he did. But you know, he did say that what they were doing, their temples, their gods, was not the one true God. And that was the heresy, because indeed he is not the one true God. He is in fact a false God. And he is a God who is not a God at all. He's just a man with a mask. He's the Wizard of Oz. He's trying to scare us and trying to do everything he can to convince us of his omnipotence. But really, if you examine the record, there's very little there that we would even want to identify with. He's jealous. He's fierce. He's a murderer. He's a racist. He goes in and destroys the cultures of other countries. He kills everybody. He forces everyone to join a centralized religion of which this force is in control, and this centralized religion is goes all the way back, and these are the forces that are not in our interests, and they may not even be fully human. I don't know if they're I don't think they're alien, but I don't know what they are. But they don't appear to be fully human.
Everybody over the internet, people talk about the reptilians. David Icke talks about the reptilians, and I really don't have that. I don't have too hard of a time believing that over 1 million years, reptiles couldn't evolve the same way the mammals did.
Oh, absolutely, and but I think it's a cousin race of ours. I think it's a race that is a cousins of ours who live here with us and have lived here with us since the beginning of time, and they are advanced, more advanced than we are. They're really quite callous and cruel, and we are their servants. We grow their food. We produce the things that they want. We think we're working for corporations, and we are working for corporations, we're working for the government, but there's this third force, this secret force, and that's the force that's actually in control. They created the banking systems, they created the politicians, the governments, the institutions, everything that we follow, and that's why we can never get cracked through the prison, because everything in the prison was designed by them to imprison us, not for anything else. And once you realize that, then you can see that this force doesn't want to kill us, not totally, but it wants us curtailed, it wants us stupid, and it wants us to be quiet slaves for it.
Now, some of the people here would say, well, that's the protocols of the elders of Zion. That's a Jewish plot. But I just did an interview with Gordon Duff, and Gordon and I are saying the same things that you and I are. We're on the same level. We know what's happening. We know that they want us to be slaves, and we know it's done by the banking system. Then it's done by the media. Now, there's a lot of Jews in the media there. They're pretty happy about that. They're pretty proud of that. But I said, I don't have any problem believing that me and Gordon Duff's ancestors, or my ancestors and Gordon Duff's ancestors, might have walked across, and his ancestors went to Judaism, and my ancestors went to Christianity. Both of which are moot points, really.
Well, they are.
And Jesus, wasn't Jesus the first rebel that conquered the problem, that solved the problem that we have today? How do you fight evil without becoming evil?
That's exactly right, and that is exactly it. And if you want to fight them, then you have to be willing to give up everything, and I mean everything. And once you decide that you're going to fight them, you will probably end up giving up everything. And that is the story of Jesus. And you can see that the anger and the cruelty surpass human imagination. And believe me, the more that we talk about the non-human characteristics of this conspiracy, the more danger we're in, but the more enlightened the human race gets.
That's exactly what's happened to me. I mean, in one day I lost everything.
Oh yeah.
And that one day stretched out into 4 months. 4 months in the hospital, $750,000 hospital bill for 3 broken ribs.
Oh yeah, the stories are everywhere. The conspiracy is so much deeper than we can ever even believe. That 20 years ago, I said to myself, okay, if in 20 years, you believe this stuff more than you believe it now, then that must mean it's true. But if in 20 years you believe this stuff less than you believe it now, then it's probably not true. Well, 20 years went by, and I believe it about 400 million times more. So you can draw your own conclusions on that one.
Now, I had asked a question. Why would God not want Adam and Eve to know the difference between good and evil? Because if you know the difference between good and evil, then you don't make a good slave, do you?
No, it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So it's not just good and evil; it's knowledge. It's smartening up. It's thinking for yourself. This is what has been from the beginning. This is the main myth of Western civilization, that you are not to eat the fruit of this tree. You are not to gain knowledge. This is why the Catholic Church outlawed reading and writing and learning how to do mathematics. This is why Europe fell into the Dark Ages. This is why, people talk about, the Jewish people and how advanced they are over other peoples. Well, one of the main reasons that occurred is because the Catholic Church outlawed reading and writing, where in the Jewish communities this was encouraged. And when the smartest Jewish kids would rise up, they would get married and have children. When the smartest Christian kids would rise up, they would have to become nuns and priests and not procreate. And so Europe became more and more stupid because of the actions of the Catholic Church. I was raised a Catholic, and my parents are Catholic, and I feel bad about having to say all these terrible things about something that a lot of people hold dear. But I'm just talking about the history of it. If you look at the history of it, they destroyed us as a people, and we're only now sort of starting to recover, and we may never recover from what the Church did to us for 2,000 years. And Islam is doing the same thing to its people right now. And it's this force, and this force created Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And it's not a good force. It is a pernicious force. It is a malevolent force. Look at its actions. Do not look at its words. Look at what it does. And if you see what it does, all you see is murder and rape and genocide and control. And that's the only
and that's the Christians are just as guilty of that, and a lot of them can't help it. I mean, I volunteered for Vietnam. I didn't have to go. God didn't let me go. Something didn't let me go there. But
yeah, I mean, this is the thing, and we have to understand. And now what they're trying to do, or what they're doing, is they are they're getting rid of Christianity. I'm not sure why. They're promoting Islam. I'm not sure why. And they are promoting a lot of New Age religions. And so it seems as if they're getting ready to change ships and start a new vehicle of control, because possibly the older vehicles of control are just not working anymore.
People have started questioning the control of the church, and that kind of happened in the 60s. We were smoking that pot, man, and we stopped wars too, didn't we?
We did, and the thing is that the church is filled with pedophiles, and it always has been, and it's been well known among Catholics for years that priests were this way, and not all priests. There's good priests, I'm sure, but a lot of priests were. And when we say pedophiles, it's of a distinctly male variety. In other words, we don't have priests molesting young girls, and that should be noted because it's very important. And this pedophilia thing is a symptom of this non-human group. This non-human group, remember, they are human, they're partially, and they're cousins of ours. They like young children. They like to have sex with young children. And they're the ones who are in control of the media, as you said, and they're the ones who are bringing out Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and all these lady singers who are encouraging and sexing girls up at a young age. And I think we have to ask ourselves, why would we do this? Why would anyone want their little girls sexed up at a young age? And why are we allowing it? Even more important.
It's been happening throughout history, and we've got a lot more people. That goes pretty high. I mean, George Bush. I interviewed Kathy O'Brien, knew Kathy O'Brien personally, and her daughter was molested by Bush Senior.
Well, she was too.
She was too. Well, she was Dick Cheney's slave. That I
Well,
believe.
you know, I'll tell you something about Kathy O'Brien. I'll try to be as nice as I can here. Kathy O'Brien came out, as you probably know, years ago, and claimed that Dick Cheney had an unusually large member.
Yes.
Right? And everybody laughed and thought that was really funny. But if you Google Dick Cheney with the word big behind it, you'll find a picture of Dick Cheney at the Wisconsin State Fair in 2004. And the lump in his pants just happens to be visible in this photograph. And believe me, Kathy O'Brien is not exaggerating. I mean, this thing is unbelievable. And when I saw that, I knew. I saw that in 2004, still up on the web. A lot of people talking about it. I knew Kathy O'Brien was not lying. I knew her
personally. The other interesting thing she said was she was allowed to do, and the reason George Bush was throwing up on that Japanese prime minister was Kathy was bringing him heroin.
Oh yeah,
Poppy Bush, and
oh yeah, I heard a story back in the old Bush days. A guy who was a guard for Air Force One. He actually worked at an air base, and he was assigned to guard Air Force One. And he was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, and Bush and Jim Baker were at a meeting at this air base. And all of a sudden, Jim Baker and George Bush come running out of the meeting and running up the stairs, and they go into Air Force One, and he's standing there guarding the bottom of the steps. And all of a sudden, he starts smelling marijuana coming down, the smell coming out of the jet. And then about 10 minutes later, they come out all bloodshot eyes, and go back into the meeting.
Well,
I don't know. I heard that story.
My friend Terry Reed was with Barry Seal when they delivered the cocaine to George and Jeb.
And Bill Clinton.
And Bill Clinton, yes.
Yeah.
I happened to got to meet Barry Seal briefly in Dallas.
Oh, really? Oh. One of my heroes. He was a great guy. He finally decided to tell the truth about everything, and then they killed him.
That's right. And he was flying the cocaine up that was being brought in by Operation Watchtower. And I ran that story in my motorcycle magazine 25 years ago in Miami about George Bush, the Mossad and CIA smuggling the cocaine in, put out by Colonel Edward P. Catolo. That's all a part of my book, Mystery Babylon, now.
I remember it very well, the whole incident, yeah, and I read Terry Reed's book, and it's good stuff. I knew somebody was caught in the Clinton machine in Arkansas, and they got out, and they told me that, you messed with the Clinton machine, and you ended up in a ditch. Pretty much, and he was scared.
I said, my career spans pissing off 4 presidents now.
Oh, good. That's always good. The more presidents you piss off, the better.
Now, tell me, let's talk about
I'm doing my best to piss Obama off.
Tell me about the culling, because I just used that word in my article. And that's called Mike Harris Doc. But you say in the culling, you say that it's been in effect for 35 years, at least, possibly over 100 years. And
yeah, it's a slow process.
Right.
Basically, the culling is what farmers call it when they have to go out and, because their chickens have a disease and have to kill all their chickens, or the cows have caught something. And so culling is a mass killing, is what it means. And what they're doing here is they have set us up for what I call the culling, which will be the trimming of the human race from its current 7 billion down to around 500 million.
Yeah, written in stone, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stone that was built by Ted Turner, yes. And so we are in so this plan was started in the 70s with the oil shock, and that's where they hatched the plan. If you remember, in the 70s with the first oil shocks caused by the Shah of Iran, everyone, there were long lines, and farmer prices skyrocketed because food is all based on oil prices, and everything in the United States kind of went sky high, and Nixon had to do price controls and blah blah blah. And when that happened, the Trilateral boys and all these guys, they began to realize that the countries that suffered the most in the oil shock were the Western countries: Canada, America, Europe, Argentina, Australia. And the countries that didn't suffer so much were the third world countries, because they weren't dependent on oil, so it didn't really matter to them what the price was. Well, they realized that if they could get everybody hooked on an oil-based agriculture, that then they could just control the food supply by the control of oil. And so the Rockefellers began financing something called the Green Revolution, which was anything but green. And they went out into the third world countries in India and everywhere, and they converted ancient farming practices that have been practiced for thousands of years into modern oil-based mass agriculture. And so India, China, and everywhere on Earth, Africa, everybody switched. And now everybody, all the old subsistence farming methods are gone and forgotten, because that generation has died away now. And a whole new generation has been born which knows nothing about how to do these things without oil. Everything they know is through oil. Furthermore, there's another generation which is now coming into aging, younger generation, which doesn't even know how to produce food at all. They have no idea how to raise chickens or milk a cow or do anything. That now we're in the perfect position. If you think about it, if you go into the ghettos here in the United States, inner cities, you will find zero people that know anything about how to grow their own food, how to produce anything for themselves, anything. And this is the perfect situation, because all they have to do now is raise the oil prices, which they are, gradually, but soon there'll be oil shocks. And this is why we're not drilling in Alaska, why they're shutting down the refineries in Louisiana and everything, not because or why Obama has outlawed coal production. This is not for the environment. This is we are being surrounded. Every avenue of escape is being slowly and surely cut off. And we had better wake up, because there's only about 2 holes left in the fence for us to get out, and they're scrambling to close those even.
You know, I've suggested that the fence they want to build going down there in Mexico is not to keep the illegals out, it's to keep us in.
You know, Ron Paul said that in that debate 2 weeks ago, and I just thought that was about the bravest thing I've ever heard a presidential candidate ever say. It's, is the whole illegal immigration problem a contrivance, so that, not that there isn't a problem, there is a contrivance so that we can, fence ourselves in voluntarily?
Well, I think it's just a little bit different. The fence is just a sideline. We could stop illegal immigration if we wanted to,
sure.
But the Border Patrol officers tell me that we can stop them. They won't let us.
They won't let you.